I call to order the special joint meeting of Buellton City Council and Planning Commission for Thursday, November 18th. Will Vice Mayor Sanchez please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Will. Stand with your hands over your heart, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of
America,
and to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Claire, roll call, please.
In my glasses on.
City Council,
Oh, there you are.
Councilmember Andrusik. Dave, are you, or Ed, are you here?
You're on mute, Ed.
We know he's here. Councilmember King is absent. Councilmember Lewis,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sanchez,
Here.
Mayor Sierra.
Here.
Planning Commission, Commissioner Mercado.
Here.
Commissioner Sarkia,
Here.
Commissioner Liggett,
Here.
Vice Chair Blockdyke,
Here.
Chair Hamel. Here. With that, business item number 1 is GP General Plan, Land Use Circulation Element Update, Workshop number 3, City Council Planning Commission Joint Study Session. I will turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you very much, Chair Hamel. Good evening, planning commissioners and members of City Council. Thank you for joining us for the 3rd joint study session with the Planning Commission and City Council for the Land Use and Circulation Element Update.
We can barely hear you, Andrea. Can you either get closer? Or,
Okay.
Thank you.
That better?
Better, thank you.
Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't have the mic down toward me. So, so before we get started with what we're hoping to accomplish tonight, I just wanted to give a brief summary of meeting protocols for tonight's meeting. So the staff presentation tonight is broken up into a couple different topic areas, and we will be splitting up the presentation with a couple different presenters. At certain points in the presentation, we will pause and ask for feedback from the Planning Commission and the City Council on specific topic areas. And in many cases, we'll have some specific questions to ask you. We will start with the Planning Commission and then move on to the City Council. There will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation for overall comments from the Planning Commission and City Council, as well as public comment. Feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council tonight is important as we formulate and refine the information and data that will go into the environmental impact report and ultimately the land use and circulation element updates. Thank you. So in terms of the purpose of tonight's meeting and what we're hoping to accomplish is really for staff to inform the Planning Commission and City Council on where we're at with the LUCE update and to obtain direction from the City Council and Planning Commission as we move forward. We will be looking for direction on specific proposed actions in what we're calling the preferred alternative, which we are calling Livable Streets Walkable Community Circulation Plan, to ensure that the environmental impact report and land use and circulation element updates are reflective of the overall collective direction of the Planning Commission and City Council. So there will be more on what the preferred alternative is later on in the presentation. So I just wanted to take a moment to let anyone in the public who may be watching to let them know that they have the opportunity to provide public comment. And you can do so by calling the number up on the screen and entering in the meeting ID and passcode that's also up on the screen. You can also, there will be an opportunity at the end for public comment, and that'll be the time that we will be accepting the public comment tonight. But you're also welcome to provide comments by sending an email to the email that is also up on the screen. So in terms of tonight's program format, so it'll be, there's 7 separate sections, if you will. The introduction will include an overall overview and of the prior workshops and study sessions and some of the key feedback that staff has received. And a quick background into today's session and the primary purpose for tonight's meeting. which is again to obtain feedback on the preferred alternative for the CEQA analysis as part of the LUCE update. We will also go over some other alternatives that will be analyzed as part of the CEQA process, including the no project alternative, as we call it. It is during the preferred alternative section of the presentation where we'll be asking for much of the feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council. We will have time at the end for overall comments from the Planning Commission and City Council, as well as public comment. And we will conclude with a bit of information on next steps and where we are headed from here. So just a little bit of background on prior workshops and study sessions, just as a little bit of a reminder. We did have the first public workshop, which was held on August 26th of 2020. This was held via Zoom and included several members of the public as well. The primary purpose of this meeting was to introduce to the public and to the Planning Commission and City Council the land use and circulation element update, what it means and how the public can remain engaged in the process. Then we moved on and had our first joint City Council and Planning Commission meeting on October 21st, 2020, where we discussed the results of a community survey that was conducted and went over the existing land use and circulation element policies in detail. Our second joint City Council Planning Commission meeting was held on February 24th, 2021, where we discussed the baseline conditions report that was prepared as part of this process. About a month later, on March 31st, 2021, we had the EIR scoping meeting where we discussed the scope of the environmental impact report and collected comments from both the Planning Commission and City Council and members of the public and affected agencies. There was also a Planning Commission meeting where we conducted a complete streets workshop, and that was on June 3rd of 2021. At this meeting, we discussed the concept of complete streets in a general sense and discussed some roadway treatments that speak to the complete streets concept. The overall collective feedback that we received as a result of these various meetings included things such as there seemed to be general support for the skinny Highway 246 idea and other traffic calming strategies. And there was also a desire to see more and safer pedestrian crossings, complete sidewalk network, and more lighting and landscaping throughout the city. So again, just a little bit of background for today's session. The LUCE update requires environmental analysis under CEQA of potential impacts that may result from things such as an updated city build out estimate under the land use element, comprehensive update to the circulation element policies and programs as well. So this is done through analyzing several alternatives or scenarios through the environmental impact report. So a preferred alternative, a project description for CEQA purposes was developed, or a draft preferred alternative project description based on the livable streets / walkable communities circulation plan that's being proposed by the circulation plan. So those details are what we're looking for feedback on tonight, or what we are including in that including in that project description. I'll go into some additional details on subsequent slides regarding what is proposed to be included in the quote preferred scenario. So as part of CEQA, we need to look at other alternatives or scenarios in addition to the preferred scenario pertaining to how the city will develop and build out over the course of the planning horizon, which in this case is through year 2045. So the no project alternative, or it can kind of be seen as the quote business as usual, will be analyzed in the LUCE EIR and will include things like existing conditions, of course, and then also capital improvement projects that are budgeted for within the circulation network for the city. It'll also include, again, a calculation of the estimated build out to the planning horizon of 2045. Let's see. Basically, the no project alternative looks at it from the perspective of, okay, if we let the city continue to build out as it has been under the existing general plan, this would be the outcome. So that's kind of what it looks at. So, and you can see here on the slide, there's a lot of different bullet points of what those particular capital improvements projects are and what the estimated build out to 2045 would be looking at. So existing land use and zoning, AHAWS sites, vacant industrial land, maximum build out under the Avenue Flag specific plan, and remaining sites in the village specific plan. So the preferred alternative, which is what I mentioned earlier, which is again the main focus for tonight's discussion, looks at the no project alternative and builds upon that to include things like an increased floor area ratio on vacant service commercial sites from an FAR of 0.15 to 0.3. So this increase is based on average real FARs from recent development projects in Buellton. And FAR really is just looking at how much of the property is built, and it's not based upon site area, but it's also based upon how number of floors that a development would particularly have. It also is based upon an increased number of multifamily units in the AHAWS sites, affordable housing overlay zone sites, based upon a maximum number shown in the 2007 general plan final EIR. It also includes transit-oriented development concepts on vacant and underutilized sites along Highway 246 under the current mixed-use ordinance and the Avenue of Flag specific plan. The preferred alternative also includes circulation system improvements, including citywide complete street circulation improvements, focused circulation improvements, concepts of things such as mobility hubs, which we'll be going into more detail on later on in the presentation, and multimodal transportation and local shuttle service. So some of these circulation concepts that I'm summarizing here, bringing up, we'll be going into detail about what that means later on in the presentation. So again, yeah, this is just a summary of the preferred alternative and what it includes. And Irma and Kara will go into further details on each of these topics, and we'll ask for feedback, specific feedback from the Planning Commission, City Council on some of them. So with that, I will turn it over to Irma to continue the discussion on the preferred alternative.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. I just want to make sure that you can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yep.
All right. So now we're going to focus a little bit more in detail on the preferred alternative that Andrea just summarized. So the purpose of this portion of the presentation is to familiarize the Planning Commission and the City Council with the specific types of tools and circulation system designs that we are looking at incorporating into the circulation element update, and to get your feedback and suggestions. So overall, we would incorporate robust policies and programs to continue implementing complete streets citywide. You are probably somewhat familiar with the complete streets concept, but I'd like to take a moment just to go through a quick refresher. As you can see on this slide, complete streets features a circulation network that provides safe and convenient access for all. A situation where pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and public transportation users of all ages and abilities are able to safely and conveniently move along and across a complete street. On the next slide, you just see some illustrations of what this means. Frequent and safe pedestrian crossings that may mean median islands, curb extensions, narrower traveled lanes, colored pavement. Having accessible public transportation citywide could mean more comfortable transportation stops, special bus lanes, and micro-transit services like on-demand transit. It could also mean protected bike lanes that will enable the entire family to safely use bicycles for local trips instead of going on getting into their automobile. And landscaping and lighting are important elements that encourage people to walk and make them feel comfortable. And again, complete streets in a small town such as Buellton will look different from a highly urban area. So we tried to use in our presentation images that could reflect situations in Buellton. Sometimes these were hard to find, but most of the time, we were able to find some that we could at least envision in our town. So Caltrans has gotten on board with the concept of complete streets. In fact, they've incorporated into their policies for roadway design. And according to Caltrans, the benefits of complete streets include increased transportation choices, promotes economic revitalization, as well as walkable communities. And the concept of 15-minute neighborhoods is where neighborhoods can walk to all of the services that they use daily, which is in Buellton. We're a small enough town that that is a vision that is attainable. Improve safety for all users, more walking and bicycling to improve public health, less congestion, improved air quality, and greenhouse gas reduction. So this next slide has a graphic that shows, according to some studies, how far people are willing to walk in general. 46% will walk 1 mile to church or school, and 36% will walk the mile distance to work. So we are fortunate in Buellton that our town is relatively small and most destinations can be reached in about a mile. So that gives us great opportunities to make that 1 mile as comfortable and safe as possible, encourage more and more people to walk, perhaps even walk greater distances. That 1 mile metric is also a key factor in the concept known as first mile, last mile solutions. This is where street improvements and support programs and services such as bike share and transit on demand would make it more safe and convenient to connect the public from their first mile, which is basically either their residence or their place of work, to public transit, and for the purpose of going on longer journeys, journeys such as commuting to work or school or shopping. Same concept for last mile. So this first and last mile, this gap that we're trying to bridge by having the complete streets and the transit network that supports, on a local scale, building up to a larger scale for public transit. So Buellton already has complete streets incorporated into its local street design guidelines. But enhanced complete streets policies will be addressed in the circulation element update of the general plan. And so this is really important that the circulation element was last updated many years ago before complete streets was really in use. So we are incorporating all the applicable policies and programs into the general plan update that we're working on right now. And again, some trade-offs are also being considered because complete streets mean that some of the improvements that are being installed, some of the services that are being installed may take away from some of the well, not take away, but change the way that the local traffic pattern is taking place right now. If we could go to the next slide, please. So some of the trade-offs that complete streets would require us to look at is LOS. LOS and traffic. So sometimes slow moving traffic is not always a bad thing. It can provide a degree of safety to pedestrians and cyclists and motorists as well as increased opportunities for all modes of travel. When people feel safe, they'll be more encouraged to go out and on their bicycles and walk. Sometimes the benefits of a project, a development project actually, outweigh the impact on LOS, the level of service. So for example, while new housing in the community may put more cars on the road, it would also result with more people supporting our local businesses, which in turn bolsters the economic vitality of our community. Roadway narrowing can be a tool used to slow down traffic in areas where speed is not desirable, and we certainly have some roadways where that is the case. So narrowing of a roadway, it allows for potential street frontage facelifts that could improve the aesthetic and the curb appeal of our neighborhoods. And it may also provide more space for on-street parking, which is getting to be a very valuable shared public resource in the community, as well as safe and convenient access to our local businesses. And businesses rely on convenient access for folks that are coming to shop. And finally, Complete Streets has the potential to enhance the overall quality of life and the character in the community by helping to create walkable neighborhoods and thus increasing community interaction, basically bringing our neighborhoods together. So we'll take a quick break here, just ask if the Planning Commission, the City Council has any comments or questions on Complete Streets at this point before we move on.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, commissioners? None here, City Council. Oh, we do have a question.
Question.
Hey, what is transit on demand?
This is where you may call, for lack of, the most well form would be a dial a ride service, or Uber is a transit on demand type of service too. There may be local vehicle services, private vehicle services that would be available.
Okay.
So it's basically also the concept of using technology to provide a better opportunity for residents and folks who need that service to be able to connect. So they're not waiting for a long time for the service to show up when they need it pretty quickly.
No, thank you.
So I see Holly has her raised hand, and I know Aaron also would like to ask a question. So whoever wants to go first, fine with me.
I'm just curious, we already have incorporated Complete Streets into our plan. That was quite a while ago. And you're talking about doing a more complete Streets. What are?
Holly, if I can clarify that,
Thank
as
you.
far as, I don't know, I think I'm getting some feedback here. Operationally, when we're reviewing and looking at projects, both developments that come in and city owned projects, we already incorporate the concept of Complete Streets in our review,
Right.
which looks at all the different features. It is not formally adopted into the circulation element. So that's part of this update, is we're formally adopting policies regarding Complete Streets into the actual document.
Thank you very much, Rose.
Aaron?
A question I had, Buellton has many different size streets with different speed limits and widths, from 246 to Avenue of the Flags and whatnot. 246 is, quite as whether it's zoned for high speed or not, heavy traffic, fast vehicles. Has there been specific studies on Complete Streets along busy highways like that? I'm not too familiar with, I'm a little familiar with them, but I'm a hard time kind of imagining a really busy highway with a complete street right alongside of it.
Well, the idea of the Complete Streets is just to ensure that the particular section that you're looking at has accommodation, or it's been reviewed for accommodation, to make sure that there's pedestrian access, bike access, transit access, and vehicular access, and multi-type of vehicles.
A busier street, I would imagine, might want a wider buffer between.
Yeah, and it depends on the
and-
location, the community, and its surroundings. So it's very site specific.
Yeah.
It just depends. So yeah, yes, Complete Streets can be adapted to larger streets like Highway 246. You would have different features. You'd pick what features would be appropriate for that particular location, and then what the end goal is. Like for 246, we know the wideness is part of the problem with visually for speeders. So one of the items we'd look at as far as how we want to address complete streets is to, from at least a visual standpoint, how do you narrow that? And, and if council wants to actually formally reduce that, how do we go about doing that between medians or reducing lane areas, et cetera?
Yeah,
There's different options we can look
yeah,
at.
there's a whole library of strategies.
Oh, yeah,
So it's all
yeah.
dependent on
Yes,
site-specific.
Yeah, and I'll just add that actually later on in the presentation, we're going to go through what some of those options could potentially be for Buellton. And that's largely a lot of the feedback tonight that we're looking
Okay.
for. So
Okay.
that'll come actually in the next section here. So.
Okay, thanks.
City Council, any other questions? I don't see any hands up there.
See any? Okay, let's see.
Okay,
I
so
will-
back to Irma.
Yes, okay, thank you. So I think we are on slide 18.
Maybe I'm the only one, but could Irma speak a little louder? It's a little tough to hear.
In and out.
Has
Did
it-
you hear that, Irma?
Okay, yes, has it been tough all along?
Yeah, it has been.
But that's better, I think, from,
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just moving my computer closer to me, so and I'll be sure to speak up. So I think we need to be on several slides prior. Right? No, one more.
there we go.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So in this portion of the presentation, we would like to introduce some focused concepts that we are considering, well, concepts and tools that we are considering as part of the circulation element update. So I'll go through a couple of these to start, and then I'll turn it over to Kara, who will go through a few more and continue on with the street descriptions. One of the concepts is a mobility hub. And I put a couple of sketches up here just to give a nice visual. So what is a mobility hub? It's a small scale transport hub, basically a bus station, enhanced bus station, if you will, that makes it easy to change from one mode of transportation to another. It can be as simple as a bus stop with a bike rack, or it can be a slightly larger hub that connects other modes of transit and services. There could be bike share opportunities at that bus stop or that mobility hub. There could also be, if there's space for large enough area there could be a little kiosk for coffee. There could be storage lockers. There could be places to deliver, pick up delivery of packages. So there's an array of possibilities and array of sizes of how these mobilities would function depending on where they are. So we thought that this would be an interesting concept to take a look at, especially since we do have a transportation corridor along Highway 246, and we've got bus stops in the community. But before I go on, I just wanted to mention that as I was doing this, in a way, it occurred to me that the community of Buellton developed as a sort of mobility hub in and of itself. So it's located at the intersection of two major regional highways, and it became known as a service town as a result of providing a central location and concentration of support services to the motorists who travel through, the roads. So this mobility hub concept is a little bit of a twist on that. It's providing centralized focus services and transportation support services also to enable our local residents and our visitors and the workers here to better access the community and give them different transportation choices. So just really quickly, back to our slide. Please show some examples of mobility hubs, combining bus transit with shared cars and bikes, enhanced by an information kiosk or a smart locker, a charging point for electric vehicles, coffee stand, shelter in our town, like from the wind and the sun, and some green landscaped areas. And microtransit could also be incorporated into here. Anyway, we can move on. So when we were looking at where we could possibly locate some mobility hubs that were more than just simple bus stops, we were looking at a couple of areas in the community. And we laid out 4 of these, and this doesn't mean that they would be located at each one of these places, but maybe 1 or 2, maybe all. We're looking at the feasibility of this. So the Sycamore area could have a smaller hub serving the residents, schools, and parks in the area. The Industrial Way and Avenue Flags areas may serve the neighboring residents and the businesses as well as visitors to our town. And the McMurray area has the opportunity to connect local residents, businesses, workers, and visitors with the regional public transportation options such as long distance buses, train service, which Amtrak, the bus train connection there, and commuter vehicles as well. And then one more slide that I would just like to go over is, so we were looking at how we could do some enhancements to the bus stops, to the mobility hubs, what we could do with the potential right-of-way that could be realized if we were to make some changes to some of the roadways. And so these are just some additional ideas to consider. Small parklets could be built around mobility hubs. The modules could be, you could take up a space equivalent to 2 or 4 parking spaces, depending on the size. On the bottom row, it shows, potential of putting in a sidewalk cafe with seating and tables, or just extending the sidewalk out a little bit, give buffered space, or a landscape lounge where people can, relax. So at this point, I would like to hand over the presentation to Kara, who will review some additional ideas and concepts, and then explore how these and other concepts could be applied to our local roadways. Kara?
All righty. Yeah, so this is another concept, a local shuttle service. And really, we're talking about 25 years in the future, 2045. While it may not seem feasible, some of these concepts, in the next 5 years, maybe 20 years down the road, if we have policies and programs in our general plan that call for us to try to implement some of these things, it could be feasible. Just to keep that in mind. So the local shuttle, this really stems from our vision plan. There's a specific action in there that says to initiate a study to develop a new electric shuttle transit service that would operate solely within city limits. And the goal of this would really be to get residents to destinations without the use of their personal vehicle. And there could be many reasons. We all know why one might not have access to a car. You could be 14 and can't drive. You could be 94 and really shouldn't be driving. You could break your right foot. So just to provide that service to our residents. Right now, it's fairly uncomfortable to get from one end of town to the other over Highway 101 by walking or biking. And a lot of residents are kind of disconnected from getting to destinations like shopping centers by any method other than a personal car. And so a local shuttle could run up and down Highway 246. It could go to places where our existing bus stops don't, like Industrial Way, Avenue of Flags, up and down Avenue and McMurray, Riverview Park, just major destinations in the city. The shuttle could also use the existing bus stops in the city and then link up with Santa Ynez Valley Transit. So right now we have 30-minute service intervals for Santa Ynez Valley Transit, and that's fairly long of a time in between. And really to increase the amount of transit riders, ideally shorter service times are ideal for that. So 15 or 20 minute. And so if this type of service is desired, there are grants that are available and likely will continue to be available. For example, a California Air Resources Board grant offers vouchers to cities to buy zero emission vehicles like the trolley below. So obviously a big hurdle with this would be to either take on the administration of running our own shuttle as a city, or with working with San Ynez Valley Transit to expand their service. But there are creative funding solutions for this and grants for things like this. So one circulation element program could just be like the vision plan calls for, to just do a feasibility study to see if this could even be something that could be reasonable and wanted for the city. Next slide. Okay, so the next concept is transit-oriented development. The big idea of this is to put housing where destinations are easily accessible by transit. And so, of course, we have to become transit-oriented to support transit-oriented development. So the circulation improvements that are presented here tonight would support the TOD, transit-oriented development, built in a way that's already allowed by our municipal code, in a way that would really retain our small community feel. This transit-oriented development is a bit of a build it and they will come mentality. But again, there are state grants for this type of housing being built. So putting in the circulation improvements, that would give opportunity for development along Highway 246. There's a stretch from Lalata to Highway 101 that could, under our current municipal code, our mixed use ordinance, be allowed to develop as mixed use multifamily and commercial developments. And from this, certain underutilized and vacant parcels that we've picked out within this area, we estimated there could be potentially 220 additional multifamily units and 36,000 additional square feet of commercial use. And that's really if all of the sites that could redevelop or develop do so to the maximum potential that we currently allow. So then on this slide really is the why. The important why is to offer viable, easily accessible alternatives to a car trip. And that in turn reduces car trips, therefore traffic on the road, and also greenhouse gas emissions. So it is difficult to find a really small town transit-oriented development image, but we've tried here. So this is what the concept could look like, with bus stops right by mixed use development. So small commercial on the bottom and then apartments on top. Okay, so those are all of our concepts. And with those in mind, we wanted to go into this plan or program that we could be proposing in the circulation element. We call this our Skinny Highway 246 West program. And you guys have heard that before. We've presented it and got majority positive feedback. So we built upon it. The real reason that we're proposing this is safety. And we're all aware of how dangerous 246 can be along our western city limits, with cars going 65 miles an hour into town, heading straight for the crosswalk at Sycamore. And so we've heard this concern of safety from the council, from Planning Commission, from our community. And we've heard it for years. The 2012 vision plan calls for a specific action to work with Caltrans to develop traffic calming and safer crossings on Highway 246. And so we're building upon that to possibly implement that. So really the program is meant to improve the quality of life of our residents, improve the aesthetics and economic vitality along the Highway 246 stretch. And that in turn could have reaching effects to other areas like Avenue of Flags. And then lastly, and importantly, Highway 246 we found is significantly overbuilt for car traffic. So right now with all of those car trips on the 246, only 30% of the roadway capacity is used. So the features we looked at for this program would be to reduce the width of the lanes, reduce just a stretch, a small portion of the highway down to one lane, have frequent and safe crosswalks, and then use that reclaimed right of way from the reduction of lanes to implement protected bicycle and pedestrian paths, public transit improvements, street trees, pedestrian lighting, parklets, and then those were just what we could think of, and there may be more. So also on this program, there's an opportunity really to rename Highway 246. And this is really to change the perspective of this road as a fast flowing throughway through our town to a street that provides all sorts of methods of transportation, comfortable access to get around, to walk and bike to schools and jobs and work or shops. And so if drivers passing through have their trip extended by 1 or 2 minutes, then that would be a trade-off that we would consider. Next slide. Okay, so the first segment of this would start at Riverview, of course, with gateway entry monuments at Riverview. Would all be designed to slow down traffic, and we do have a vision plan action too that speaks to this as well. Let's see here. So the 2 lanes upon entering the city would be narrowed, making room for protected bike lanes, as you see in the image below. So the one on the left is the existing roadway. The one on the right is a conceptual rendering, and the Planning Commission has seen this before. That just makes way for protected bike lanes with narrower roads. And then the 2 lanes would start to merge into one as you approach Sycamore Drive. And this is in order to slow down traffic and support a safe crossing at Sycamore. So Sycamore to Lalata would be 1 lane each way. We could use that reclaimed road for bus turnouts, bus lanes, bus shelters, mobility hub, protected bike lanes, street trees, parklets, other things. Mobility hub, for Sycamore, there is a publicly owned and underutilized landscape area on Sycamore, the southeast corner. And we thought that could be a potential mobility hub area. Then just crosswalks on all sides of Sycamore, Calor, and Lalata. So frequent crosswalks there. Next slide.
Kara, can you be more specific on that Sycamore?
Sure.
Where the mobility hub and where the landscaped area is?
Yeah, so if you go back to the slide, it may be hard to see on the aerial at Sycamore. Yeah.
Right where
Yeah. So
corner of
this,
246 and Sycamore?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Lalata to Park Street, still 1 lane each way. This is a mostly residential area. And again, the reclaimed road could be used for all the things that are mentioned, plus on-street parking, because it is next to industrial way. Another mobility hub could be near Industrial Way, either in the reclaimed right of way or on one of the potentially developed parcels. And then enhanced crosswalks at Industrial Way and Valley Station Drive. And then here we would start to see the transit-oriented development. So some vacant parcels, some underutilized parcels that could be developed and redeveloped into that transit-oriented development. So mixed use, residential and commercial. Okay, then Park Street to Avenue of Flags. Once we're approaching Avenue of Flags, we would transition back into 2 narrower lanes. And you can see on the images at the bottom, the existing roadway right now, and then the conceptual with protected bike lanes again. Crosswalks at Park Street and Central Avenue where there are none now. And maybe enhanced crosswalks at Avenue of Flags with bulb outs. And then the Avenue of Flags specific plan would call for street furniture and trees as development comes in. And also potentially a mobility hub at Avenue of Flags. And again, there's vacant and underutilized parcels in this area that could be developed as transit-oriented development. Okay, next slide. Our last segment of this would be Avenue of Flags to 101. And here, I mean, we have lots of traffic going through, so 2 lanes, but just slightly narrowed center lane to provide for a buffered bike lane. And you can see that in the 2 images on the bottom. Still, the Avenue of Flags specific plan in this area would call for street furniture and street trees. And then transit-oriented development again on any parcels that might be developed or redeveloped in this area. And now our question slide. So these are just some of the questions that we are throwing out there just to elicit some feedback, but definitely feel free to go beyond these. So
Can we just call out, or are you do you want to do a specific group first?
I'll turn it over to Patty for Planning Commission comments first.
We'll run through Planning Commission and then we'll turn it over to City Council for those comments. So
Okay.
Mercado.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Chairperson. I like the whole idea of the skinny Highway 246 West. If we can get Caltrans on board. I like the idea of the mobility hubs, especially either like on McMurray Road and especially for the bikes, the buses. And then if we can get UPS and FedEx to drop packages off, you look at the congestion on a regular day on a busy street, how they don't back it up, but there's a lot of traffic. And if that could just be developed into where twice a day or 3 times a day, they just drop off their packages. And I think it would help part of the congestion on 246 and some of the other smaller streets in town. And hopefully the renaming of 246, it'd be nice, but we can also get Caltrans on board. The only thing I see is the comment of where 1 or 2 minutes makes a difference. We have so many commuters coming from Lompoc, and you also have so many people coming from the other side of San Ynez to do business on this side of town, which 1 or 2 minutes, what people do then is they get on 101 and try to circulate around Buellton. And then we're just taking the idea of people wanting to be in Buellton and doing business here. So we have to look at the bigger picture of what we're trying to develop. So those are just things I have see.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Liggett.
I think the idea of renaming the highway is very creative, and I like that. Not only would it bring some identity to Buellton, just getting rid of the term highway might in itself reduce traffic because we won't consider it a highway, which I think has a connotation to move quickly. All the other ideas I really agree with. Mobility hubs, I'm not sure. I can't imagine the demand for that with such a small town of Buellton. I agree that it's being at the intersection of 246 and 101 that regionally, you'd get more use. I think regionally you get more use than actually by Buellton residences. Which isn't a bad thing, but that's just a thought right there. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not, but it's something that Commissioner Art said that going up to the local shuttles, I think that's a fantastic idea. I really enjoy that. But to be really successful, maybe to even bring it more as a priority, not necessarily 25 years in the future, is if we had a coordination with all the cities in the valley so that Buellton could go to Solvang, could go to Santa Ynez without driving, and vice versa. Those people could come to Buellton, it'll revitalize it, it'll get more people here. And that also might reduce the traffic. So
Right.
we don't have that urgency to save 1 or 2 minutes. In fact, I'm skeptical if it would even take 1 or 2 minutes longer. I mean, I'm just thinking more 30 seconds, really. It's probably worth a study, but I don't see that as a huge issue. But anyways, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sarkia.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing something with 246. I'd like to see trees split that highway, split those lanes up. So as you approach Buellton, you see trees instead of the lanes. Would help you slow down. I like the name change idea, Russ Hicks Parkway, Sarkia Parkway, Buellton Parkway,
Windmill Parkway.
Windmill Parkway.
The list goes on and on.
Yeah. But we're heading in the right direction here. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Blockdyke.
Oh, I don't know where to begin. Actually, I really do like the idea of skinny and 246 there. And we need to slow down the traffic big time. Are we still planning on a traffic light at Sycamore, or is that out the window? I'm just curious, or a stop sign or something?
We have to follow Caltrans standard warrants for that. And we just don't have the volume of traffic on the side streets to warrant traffic signal or anything to control that intersection other than.
Even at Sycamore and 246?
Yes, because we have other routes. We even looked at, blocking off access points like at Riverview, the other streets, Kaylor, everything else to try to force all the traffic to just Sycamore, and there still wouldn't be enough traffic volume to warrant the signals, unfortunately.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it is difficult to cross there. Of course,
That
if
is
we
true.
narrowed it, it would make it easier down to one lane.
Right.
But when you push all the cars together in one lane, you're going to have more of a constant stream.
Right,
And lately, it seems more that way than it used to be.
right.
As a
That is
person
true.
who's driving out on that road every single day. Sometimes you're waiting, it seems like you're waiting forever for the traffic to stop
Right.
so you can pull out. Mobility hubs. I think mobility hubs are great. Usually, where I've seen mobility hubs, usually in a town our size, you have one big mobility hub in one part of the town. Like what I've seen in Europe, you have a train comes to the town, you get off the train, there's a place where a whole bunch of buses park and people can park their bikes, cars, everything else, and then you come into town from there. The train may not even be in the middle. The train station may not even be in the middle of town, but from there you can get back to town. So the idea of the shuttle, is wonderful. We need the shuttle for sure. Mobility hubs, for the sake of getting Amazon.com and FedEx or whatever, that sounds really great. And having plenty of places for transit to pull over and park is very important. And the use of trees for traffic calming, that's obvious. Anything to skinny the road up. That's probably all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna concur with most of that. I'm in agreement with the skinny 246 to reduce the speed. I didn't know that the traffic light was completely off the table. I guess my concern on I'm kind of thinking along the same lines, mobility hubs. I don't know, the city seems really small for that. My concern would be like we were looking at the one on the map on Sycamore 246, the southeast corner where there's a little bit of land. I'm kind of concerned that the mobility hub would actually make traffic more congested there, or, and we can look at other places, but when we get down to picking or choosing where these want to be, I'd like to see more, maybe like a detailed aerial sketch on, exactly where it would be and how does the traffic flow through it, and parking and bicycling and walking all around that. So that's my concern on the mobility hubs. With that, I'll turn it over to City Council. If Mayor wants to call on her people, or if someone wants to raise their hands for comments, questions so far.
I think if it's okay with you, I'll just do what you did and go through the order. I'll
Perfect.
start with Councilmember Lewis. Do you have any comments on what's been presented so far?
Yes, ma'am. So I really like the skinny highway. I like using trees to skinny it up and make it look pretty rather than just dedicated lanes. So all you see is lanes. I really feel strongly about the transit, or however you want to call it. But we had a foreign exchange student that lived with us from Denmark, and her only complaint with Buellton was that she couldn't do anything, couldn't get anywhere. Everything was so far away. There was no transit for her to get anywhere. And not just within Buellton, but like one of the people from the Planning Development Commission said, they can't get to other cities as well. So we have a lot of young kids, teenagers and stuff that can't get to practice, can't get to after school jobs, all these things that could really be alleviated if we had some system for them to get around. So I know that we do have the transit, but it's not as comprehensive as it could be, and that would help. I like using the reclaimed right-of-way. I don't know how I feel about the mobility hubs yet. I just don't know how much they'll be used, and then I worry that our local teens and kids might be the one using them, or the ones using them, and maybe it might pose more of a risk rather than the reward. But I don't, I'm not totally dead set against them. And I really like the name change for Highway 246. I think just hearing highway means you drive faster just subconsciously. So changing the name, I think, would help a lot. And I think that's about it.
Thank you very much. Councilman Andrusik. Ed, did you have any comments?
Ed, you're on mute.
Ed, you need to unmute yourself. No.
I'll try.
Nope, I'll let you figure that out, Ed. I'll go to Vice Mayor Sanchez, and as soon as he's done, we'll come back to you. Vice Mayor Sanchez?
Yes, I had my first reaction on the thinning out the street there at the west end. Nobody that lives here is going to ride a bike to the corner and ride in on the highway. If you live in either neighborhood, you're going to ride further to the, to one side you'll go down to Valley Dairy Way, or the other side you'll go down. Not everybody's going to jump on the highway there, so I think it'd be a waste of resources to put a local bike lane from the entrance of town to Sycamore. As far as the hubs with the UPS and Amazon idea, if you put a place to pick up packages, is that what I understood? It meant that the UPS or Amazon would go there instead of coming to your house? That's a question for whoever.
Well, it would be a possibility, depending on what type of a mobility hub we're looking at. But again, mobility hubs, at the very basic level could just be a simple bus stop and a bike rack so that people could have places to put their bikes and get on the bus. So
It makes it, I sounded like it was a place to have more traffic, so I wouldn't be in favor of putting something that would add more traffic to the intersection area. But I did like the idea of the bikes. And I know it's coming up, or we'll be talking soon, possibly about having rented electric bikes. And if we had I ran one in Santa Barbara and went around town. And if we had something like that where people could rent a bike, drive downtown, and that people could actually commute on them, you get a monthly pass, and you go back and forth to Solvang, or just even from one side of town to the other. For the monthly pass, it's worth just having that. And it sounds like we're gonna have a very long name for this parkway, if everybody wants their name on it. So, but that sounds like fun too.
Very good.
That's all.
That's
Thank you.
good. Councilman Andrusik, you're up.
Am I unmuted yet?
You are. Thank you.
Duh. That's the first successful thing we've gotten done here. I like the mobility hub because I think it offers a chance for the community to get involved and give identity to different parts of our city. I don't look for Buellton to always be 1 square mile, but I would like us to invite people to improve Buellton or make Buellton a better place to come to, or to enjoy peace and serenity, or have activities, which we do. Our park system, I think, is the best in the valley, and I just think we've got a lot of area we can continue to improve people's desire to get involved in the town instead of just come and shake their head and walk away, or leave their coffee cup on the curb. The mobility hub strikes me as an opportunity to get people involved, and I think it's a two-way street, and I like the idea of that phrase, mobility hubs. And I would, but I think it would be a good idea to have maybe not a workshop, but a public presentation or a two-way conversation with the community. What would you like to see in the way of mobility hubs? Do you want to pay for them, or do you want to have fundraisers to recognize people that have come to the community and either passed away or are still here, and perhaps invite them to experience the fun part of seeing something you've done in the community. You know, Russ Hicks had a desire to do the river park, and it's amazing how many times, just about every time I look at River Park, I'm thinking of Russ. He wouldn't have been there if they had not pushed through, and his council at that time made themselves, they just pulled together, and we've been highly successful, I believe, in establishing our little bit of the community with the Riverview Park. So I think the mobility hub, we maybe just keep them in, maybe the pocket parks would be the best place to start. So someone's not having to say, because my conversation today was going to be, how much are we talking about? What do you look a mobility hub to cost? And do you have a flow chart of how to get people involved, or how to get donations, collecting ideas or activities, get people to commit to taking ownership in the town? So thus far this evening, that's the one thing that I've really enjoyed hearing about, and I'm curious if others see a benefit in having that, or opening it up to, maybe a school project would be wonderful, just to get the people that are coming to be our next generation in the city involved in the appearance and livability of our Buellton.
Righty, thank you, sir. So are you campaigning for the Andresic Parkway or the Andresic Parklet Hub?
No, it was the Sierra Statue Farm.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I
You're
like
quite
that
welcome.
one.
We've started one for you on the avenue, and I forget the lady's, Robin, I think was her name, that designed or built the statues that we have on the avenue.
I remember that.
And so I just think we kind of have small, walking step. We don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but I do think I'd be interested in what is more important for the citizens or the people that use their feet, and we got bicycles. We have bicycles and walkers that we need to protect their availability of enjoying themselves without having to carry a taser for the people that want to try to run them off the road. I think it's this opens the door for ideas, and I'm sure there are some great ideas that would come if we maybe did had an essay contest or something like that for the community to see if there's what would people like to see next. I've felt like we could expand our boundaries a bit for the good of the community. So I'd like to not put that take that off the table. I'd like that to remain a viable option for improving the future of Buellton and the functionality.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. For me, mobility hubs, it's hard for me to foresee into 2045. I think mobility hubs are a good idea. I think if we started with our north and south park and rides, or our parklets like Councilman Andresic mentioned. I don't know that we have easements in the city to build parklets with the mobility hubs? I don't know.
We've sure got the power to do it.
So if I could answer that, the parklets would be from the reclaimed right-of-way, potentially on 246.
On 246. Okay, thank you. The TOD, you talked about a 220 unit mixed use development on Highway 246. That just seems huge to me. But again, it's hard to foresee into 2045. That's a long way out. We do have a valley transit that goes all around the valley. The city pays into that. We get transit money. So I know it only picks up about every 20 minutes or half hour or so, but I've been told that it's pretty good to get you to Solvang or Santa Ynez, even Los Alamos sometimes. The skinny 246, oh my gracious, I ran for council, I don't know how many years ago, on the safety issues of 246, and a skinny 246 would be something I would love to see. I know I've banged heads with Caltrans over the stoplight. We even had a campaign. They did a traffic study and we made sure everybody went out Sycamore instead of Valley Dairy or Riverview to try to bump up the numbers. And we still couldn't come up with the right number for a traffic light at Sycamore. Trees, we've tried to talk to them about putting trees in. When they put in the narrowing at not Lalata, at Oak Tree, Twin Oaks and Oak Tree. We had asked them for a narrowing of the highway. They told us they weren't going to do it. And then 2 weeks later, they threw the plans on Rose's desk that they were doing this. And they put in rocks or their own concrete shaped rocks instead of trees. They don't want any greening on Highway 246 because we are in a drought. And so although I love the ideas of trees and a green belt, I'm not sure we can get okay from Caltrans on that. I don't know. Has Caltrans, have we talked to them about coming down to the 1 lane at Lalata through Park and then going back out again? Has that been discussed with Caltrans?
In our general meetings, we have discussed reducing the whole west side to maybe 1 lane. And they did not, put up red flashers that said no immediately. We would have to provide a study that shows that we aren't reducing capacity and creating operational issues. So there's some work that would need to be done to justify that the improvements will still work for them operationally.
Okay, thank you. I love the idea. I'd love to see a skinny 246. I truly believe if we change the name from a highway to a parkway, that will help slow traffic down. And again, I think they're all really good ideas. It's hard for me to look at something 24 years, thinking out 24 years. That's why we have this incredible planning department that has more of a vision than I do. But I like the ideas so far. Thank you. Turning it back over to our chair of the meeting.
Thank you. And I think we will move on to the next IRMA presentation.
Yes, okay, thank you. Before I comment on the next couple of slides, I would like to add a couple of comments on the mobility hubs. I am really encouraged to hear everybody's comments on this, but wanted to add that in doing our research, well, first of all, the mobility hub idea, if it's something that the city feels comfortable including in the circulation element, it would be in the form of a program that says the city will consider mobility hubs and conduct a study and do the feasibility, and address all those items such as cost and location. And to Councilman Andriesek's point, I had looked at other areas where mobility hubs were being developed, and in this country as well as in Europe, and it's really interesting. It was a vehicle to use to enable the communities to come together. They use public workshops, community involvement to design these workshops and to program. To design the mobility hubs, to come up with programs and services that they would like to see. So it really is truly just a vehicle to help the community come together, and for this plan to enable them to come up with something that meets their needs. So all of these things could be addressed. We just need to have the program direction, the policy and program direction in the circulation element to enable that to move forward. So we're not putting any dots on the maps in yet. We need to study this a lot further because staff certainly we were asking the same questions you were about, well, where would we put these? It sounds like a good idea, maybe. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that, this would just give us direction on how to move forward with incorporating it into their plans. All righty. So we've heard a lot about Highway 246 on the west side of town, but there's other areas in the city that we need to consider as well. And so because Complete Streets has been incorporated into our roadway design standards, and we are now incorporating it into our circulation element, we would be able to apply these, or we would be applying these to other areas of town as well, such as the eastern segment of Highway 246 and McMurray Road. These would all be candidates for the Complete Streets design treatment. We would have sidewalks, connected sidewalks, improved bike lanes, bus stops, street trees, all those things that we've been talking about tonight. On the east end of town, we are trying to keep an eye out for potential locations that could accommodate a regional transit hub, perhaps. If maybe this is the one place that's found to be feasible. We already have regional transit services coming to that location. We're also looking at potential areas to accommodate off-street parking for large vehicles. This has been a challenge in the city for years, and so we're keeping an eye out in this area. Other sections of town, the Avenue Flags specific plan. There's already a pretty robust circulation and infrastructure plan identified in the specific plan, and we would just continue to implement that. And if there's any enhancements that fall out of the circulation element, could certainly benefit the avenue as well. And we may consider potentially the feasibility of locating a mobility hub in the downtown to serve not only the residents who wish to come down there, and the children who are needing to would like to ride their bikes downtown, or ride their bikes downtown and then catch a bus to go somewhere, teenagers perhaps, but to accommodate businesses that could benefit by that, and visitors coming into the community. So that would be another area that we would look at in the feasibility study. And then finally, another area that has been a big challenge for the community is the Highway 101 interchanges. So we will continue to identify needs and potential solutions that may be available to make the crossings more safe and convenient for everyone. And ideally, with the image that we see here, having the opportunity to cross the freeway safely on a bicycle and even on foot, that would be a good thing. So we will again ask the Planning Commission and the City Council at this point if they have any questions, but also ask if they have any comments or feedback in terms of what types of complete street improvements would be important to see along East 246 and McMurray. Would a transit hub be something that looks to be like a good idea on McMurray? Do you have any suggestions on how to accommodate off-street parking for large vehicles? We'd certainly like to hear those. Again, mobility hub on the Avenue Flags. Could that be a good idea? Could it feed into our civic median that we're planning with the park and the amphitheater? Pedestrian and bike bridge, or widening the existing bridges over 101. So I'd like to turn it.
Irma, I have a thought. Do you think we could make this in the way of a challenge or a request for community comment with regard to, and then briefly discuss the functionality of a mobility hub, how it might benefit the walkability for the people that don't want to use cars, or those sort of things, that want to have exercise. We've got a nice walking city, walkability city, and we could uncover somebody that has some very good talent in making it appealing to other people to help improve the future of our city. So I'm motivated to see if we could find some, and I don't know if it's going to the classrooms, or if just service club groups asking for their input. And we're always going to run into somebody going, well, they need $2 million for this or that. But we don't necessarily have to throw all that money away, but we can get mobility and sweat equity, those sort of things, to get people geared up for making the town more attractive, or putting an identity to it that maybe we have overlooked for a long time.
So this type of an idea is certainly something that we could incorporate into the circulation element as a program, like a policy that the city, this is a desire of the city, and that one of the programs would be to conduct a feasibility study or convene workshops with the community to get their input, to convene workshops with various community organizations. So there's a lot of models out there that people have used in other cities. This has been it's an up and coming notion that we need to go back to a calmer way and a more viable way of moving about our local town other than jumping in the car. So,
and or cookie cutter ideas, something unique that would bring people, attract people, as the word got around that was really cool. Those things worked well.
Yeah.
And okay.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of that.
So
or considering it.
Yeah. So if I could turn it to Commissioner, Chair, PC Chair Hamel to ask the questions of the Planning Commission, to answer some of the questions that we have up here. If you have any suggestions, thoughts, feedback.
Okay, thank you. I think our planning director is going to add, no?
Nope, I was just
I thought
directing
you
it
were
back
gonna
to you
add
just as
something to
Irma
that.
was, so nope. it's all yours.
So I'm going to add a quick, I guess, overall comment to what was just suggested. Is that, are we like under a time frame for this land use circulation element? And like, is there time to bring the community in at this point for this kind of discussion and ideas, or how does that work?
To bring the community in to have the type of discussions that we were just talking about mobility hubs and some of the improvements.
Yes, what I think that was Councilman Andresick that was making that. So I was just wondering, because I know before when we were working on the specific plan for Avenue of Flags, there were community workshops, well early on, and like several
Right.
of them before it came back to Planning Commission and City Council and stuff. So, is this a good time to do that? Can we do that? How? That's kind of what I'm asking.
So if it is the city's desire to incorporate some of these ideas as goals and objectives in the circulation element and the policies, at that point, we could incorporate in their programs that would enable these workshops to take place. So basically the general plan circulation element would set the framework and enable this type of idea to move forward. Similarly, the Avenue of Flags specific plan was, especially in the vision plan, it kind of enabled and gave direction to move forward with a specific plan idea. So I think if we can just view the general plan as we're setting the stage for something like this, and then the implementation of that policy and program would be to go out and hold these workshops. So short answer is it would probably be most productive to set the framework in place in the circulation element, and once it's adopted, it would enable staff to start implementing some of these actions, such as the workshops with the community.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn it back over to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Mercado, any questions or further comments?
A few more comments. I like the idea of a regional transit hub. You're trying to connect the whole valley. Growing up, my sisters and I lived on a big ranch way outside of town. And to get to school, my parents dropped us off at a certain spot to catch a bus, city-run bus. And there were probably 5 or 6 different routes coming in, and they all went into downtown Pomona. But if you wanted to go somewhere else, you got a bus transfer, and you were able to get on a different bus going a different direction. So what that happens and helps is that instead of making 14 million stops, that takes time, you get to a certain spot, transit hub, and then you get on another bus. And so the circulation then is, for a big town, instead of 45 minutes to an hour, is now half an hour. So if you can justify the speed, because no matter what people say or do, it's about time and time management. So if you can, and there was not only us, there's probably 20 other kids who went to school with us, but there are also a lot of professionals, people who, you know, they went in this direction. I'm going to work at the hospital on the other side of town. I can get there. So somehow getting the whole, you have to get the whole valley involved, but you can have the transit hub, whether here or one in Solvang, where that bus from Buellton goes to here, if you want to continue on to San Ynez. So for kids who wanted to play after school sports, they knew, and the parents knew that, okay, they can pick them up at a ball field, or they can go here and then come back home and then pick them up at a certain spot.
Yeah.
And I think something like that, you know, 10 years down the line, 15 years, because if we want to get more traffic off the road, you're gonna have to find a way to get people to be able to be moved in a fast amount of time. I think the PED and the bike bridge on 101 would be a great idea. My wife walks our dog every morning, and she goes from Free Yard to Industrial Way and past. And it's great in the morning, but if you were trying to do that in the afternoon because of traffic, it's hard crossing that road. So you go up to Massa, come back around through McMurray, and you hit the stoplights. You've got to be able to have crossways to get people to not to avoid as many cars. So somewhere like in that. And I think, you know, since because we are separated by 101, we have to remember east and west should be somehow conjoined and make it applicable to where everybody, whether you live on the east side of Buellton and where there's more housing, but if you plan on further development later on, 10 years down the road, you have to be able to get across 101 to that section of town on a reasonable amount of time with whether it's bike, busing, or something to make it feasible. And when you talk about feasibility, it also has to be practical. People have to, and when you throw in, well, it's just going to cost $10. Well, is it practical to spend $10, or can I get over there and just spend $2 because I've just saved such amount of time?
Yeah.
So you have to put them both together and look at that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Liggett.
Yes, I agree with and like all the ideas that's been presented. I think what happens on the east side can be the same treatment as the west side. I think a lot of those strategies could easily be transferred over. 101, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a pipe dream, but that would be fantastic. Maybe we could tap into that new infrastructure bill that got passed. I don't know, but however we could do it, I think it would be a game changer for our city to get over to the big time shopping over there, Albertsons, to the more local businesses on this side. Just an idea in response to, you know, if the state does not want vegetation, does not want to irrigate along plants along the highway, you could use sculptures or art or some other elements that aren't vegetation that like could provide an identity and have a similar effect. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sarkia.
Well, let's see. The mobility hubs for getting people around town and out of town. We need to interface with the existing school bus system. And that's where, you know, that's a hub in the mornings where families can gather, are gathering to take the bus back and forth to school. So that's one of the things we need to consider with these mobility hubs. One of the things was a hub over at McMurray. It seems like McMurray is awfully congested unless you want to do a hub behind Albertsons or up on the north side.
What about that? You walk behind Firestone Walker Brewery or?
Yeah,
or
up
right
on
along
that
the
side of
freeway,
town.
there's a lot
Yeah,
of land that hasn't been developed?
but not around 246 in McMurray.
No.
It's already
Okay.
way too congested. Continue to develop the one-on-one interchange for pedestrians and bicyclists, like specifically the bridge there at 246 and the 101. That'd be great. And that's something that we could really use Caltrans to help us develop. We are the folks that live on this side of the 101. It's just too dangerous to ride a bike or walk across that bridge to get over to Albertsons and the shops and stuff over there. I wouldn't even consider it. We should continue to develop our RV parking and large vehicles, which we are as private concerns are being developed, which helps. Having smaller mobility hubs on Avenue of the Flags, both at the north side and the south side is doable. And I like what Mr. Liggett said about if we can't do trees in the middle of 246, sculptures or a bridge would be a great idea to help kids, especially in the mornings and after school, get over 246. And I don't want to wait for a stoplight. When I grew up, they wouldn't put stoplights at some of these major intersections where I grew up in Chula Vista until people died. And that's a really sad way to go. All right, that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
I like that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Blockdyke.
Okay. I'd like to echo Chairman, I'm sorry. I'd like to echo Commissioner Mercado's ideas about the transit system. A transit hub on McMurray Road, I think would be a really big transit hub that was regional, would be a fantastic asset to Buellton. I think all buses should end up coming there. All the intercity buses, the clean air buses, the ones that go to Cal Poly or UCSB, whatever, they all should up there. And that we have a good shuttle system that gets us there. Suggestions for how to accommodate off-street parking for large vehicles. I guess we would have to purchase land, but doesn't have to be in the city center. I mean, if we have a shuttle system, they can shuttle back into town. Mobility hub on Avenue of the Flags. I think just a bus stop or several would do it. And bike parking, but mostly I think that belongs at the regional transit hub. And then a pedestrian bike bridge necessary. Question for Rose. What's the lifespan of the bridge we have right now at the Massa? Excuse me, Rufus T. Buell or something. What is it called now?
Yep.
Rufus T. Buell.
Okay.
I don't know that information off readily. I might have to take a look at it. But I believe it may be one of the bridges considered for evaluation with Caltrans. There's several bridges throughout the state that they looked at. It had to be evaluated for seismic and for clearance and things like that. And I can't recall if that was on that list or not. I mean, it's right there, and I can't confirm.
It's a little scary because we only have the two roads. I mean, not including Santa Rosa, which you'd have to go all the way around, but that goes across. If one goes down, that would affect the traffic.
Yeah.
In all Buellton.
And they check it. I mean, I said that they do the structural reviews periodically and do inspections actually every year of any